customer service, done right, can be your company's single biggest competitive advantage. Welcome to the Customer Service Revolution. Join customer service authority and best-selling author John DeJulius as he interviews leaders who are revolutionizing their industries. This is more than a podcast, though. It's a movement. The Customer Service Revolution is a radical overthrow of conventional business mentality designed to transform what customers and employees experience. If you're a revolutionary customer service leader who's ready to stop competing on price and obsessed with building a brand that people cannot live without, this podcast is for you. Welcome to the Customer Service Revolution podcast with John DeJulius. This week, John sits down with the amazing Ann Mahlum, an American entrepreneur, motivational speaker, experienced CEO, business owner, philanthropist, and athlete, about her passion for starting and building businesses that truly impact people's lives. In this episode, you'll learn how Ann launched Back on My Feet, a national nonprofit organization that got homeless people in running clubs, how she founded Solid Core and grew it into one of the country's most successful boutique fitness companies, what Ann calls the power of voluntary behavior, the two questions every entrepreneur should ask themselves about their venture, and what Ann will be sharing in her presentation at this year's Customer Service Revolution Conference. Now here's your host, John DeJulius.
Welcome, revolutionaries, to another episode of the Customer Service Revolution podcast. And today I have Ann Mahlum, a serial entrepreneur who has founded, built, and sold incredible organizations, a motivational speaker, an experienced CEO, a philanthropist, and incredible athlete. Welcome, Ann.
Hi, John. How are you?
It's great to have you. I'm so great. How are you?
I'm wonderful. Thank you.
So, Ann, we've just gotten to know each other, I think, in the past 6 or 8 months. And when I read your story and your bio and all you've accomplished, I would think you're on the back nine. I would think you're 60, 70, 80 years old. And I can't believe what you've done in such a short time.
Well, that's funny you say that, because before this show started, we were just talking about how in dire need I was of a vacation. So
yeah.
all of that makes sense.
You got to take a break. So I can't wait for our listeners to hear all that you've done. You started in North Dakota.
Mm-hmm.
What was that like? And what, got you to be this serial entrepreneur at such a young age?
Yeah, I think any entrepreneur who does something at the tenacity of which I did, you're trying to heal something, you're trying to find something, you're driven out of emotion. So as you mentioned, me and 9 other people grew up in North Dakota. Just kidding. There's a few more than that. But
right.
I had a great childhood there. Just like when you're a kid, I have the view of being a child. I don't know another world exists. And I thought everybody had a bike in a yard and, friends that you could play with and safe neighborhoods. And it was really great being a kid there. But when I was 16, I got a kind of hard dose of reality of what my parents' marriage, how unstable my parents' marriage was. And frankly, the somewhat double life my dad had been living over the last few years. My dad is an addict. I had always known that. I heard, my dad struggled with drugs and alcohol. And then he went into a program when I was like 5 years old or so and got clean, and never seemed to be an issue for him again. But unfortunately, the way addictions usually work, that you're tempted a lot, and gambling entered my dad's life, and my dad gambled away, all of which we didn't have, to be honest. We grew up pretty in meager household. And that was really challenging for my mom, who had, worked with my dad on his prior addictions, and she just wasn't going to do it again. So my parents separated when I was 16, and I know a lot of people's parents separate. So this is not oh my gosh, I'm so special.
Right,
but
right.
At the time, right, it's your family, your kids, and it threw me for a pretty big loop. And I started running to really deal with it. I was angry at my mom for 3 years, and I tried to fix my father and was unsuccessful at all those things besides running. And so I was just convinced myself that I got to have a perfect life, that I don't want to have any more pain. I need to be special enough. I need to do something extraordinary. That's the only way that I'm going to escape, pain in my life. So I sort of started on that mission, and I went to college in 3 years and then graduate school in a year. And I was such in a hurry to build in my mind what this perfect life was going to look like, which was a house, a husband, 2 kids, just nothing was ever going to go wrong ever again in my life, John. And then,
so it sounds like a couple of things. One, running became your escape.
Yeah.
And then 2, it made you, lack of a better word, a control freak, and that you were gonna not let anything else affect
nothing was
you.
ever gonna hurt me again.
Right.
Yeah. And so I found myself in Philly when I was 26 years old and completely lost. Nothing was
working in corporate America at the time, right?
I never made it there. I was working in nonprofits. My graduate degree was in political communication. I had moved to Philly to work at a nonpartisan sort of political watchdog for the city. And I just was so lost, and I didn't know what I wanted to do. And, I said, I don't know if I want to get married or have kids. And, I sort of felt very lost in every area of my life, which can feel very overwhelming, but also a feeling I think a lot of people feel when we're trying to figure it out at a young age. And the one thing I did know was that I was a runner. I kept running the last 10 years. And I had ran by a homeless shelter so many times over those last couple of years that I was living in Philly, John. And then I started to notice a group of guys outside of a homeless shelter. And pretty quickly, we sort of had very fun banter back and forth as I would run by them each morning. And one morning in late May, the light turned red, and I look back at these guys and just think, oh my God, this is it. Like, I'm supposed to start a running club for these guys. Oprah's aha moment or light bulb. It was so clear. I felt so certain. And I was like, this is what I'm supposed to do. And so I, called the director and convinced him to let me start this running club, which did take some convincing. At this time, I had accepted a job at Comcast. It was going to be my first entree into corporate world. And I had asked for 6 weeks so I could get this running club going, that when I would have to travel so much, it would work without me.
What would make you think, and this is such a bad stereotype, but what would make you think homeless would want to run? Like,
I've always, listen, my dad had a rough shake at life, and my dad has just always been somebody that I love, but I've always felt bad for. I feel he didn't have a great upbringing. He had 2 parents who were alcoholics. I don't know if my dad's dad killed himself or accidentally shot himself. So he never really had any good direction. And I feel my dad never took the steps to heal himself. So I've always just sort of looked at my dad as this grown man who's needed a lot of help, love, support. And that's what I saw in these men. Again, my dad being an addict, and that's what I associated with people who were homeless, right or wrong. So I felt very safe, and I felt very connected to those guys. They reminded me of my father.
So, and when you approach, I know you had a start, which is called Back on My Feet. On my feet. Yeah. But what was there, like the homeless men, I'm assuming, or homeless people, what was their take when you approached them and said, hey, do you want to go running with me? Do you want to join this club?
I was diplomatic even back then, and I didn't approach the guys. I approached the shelter. So I went through the director of the shelter and, worked through him. And he told me flat out, I don't think this is going to work. These guys aren't going to be interested in running. And I just convinced him to ask them. So he said, okay, I'll ask them, Ann, but I'm not going to tell them that some young blonde girl wants to come and run with them and whatever. And so he told me not to get my hopes up, but in a week later or so, he emailed me with the names of 9 guys and their shoe sizes. And so I went up to meet them in the chapel of the homeless shelter the end of June. And I got running shoes donated and shirts and socks and everything that they needed to start their running career. And it was a really transparent introduction for everybody. I was very honest about why I was there, how running had been a big source of healing for me, who my dad was, how I see a group of guys outside the shelter. I live right around the corner. And I made them sign a dedication contract that pretty much committed them to a form of excellence to be a part of the running club at the time. They had to be there every day, every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, on time, come with a positive attitude and treat everybody who's part of the running club with respect and dignity, and that nobody would ever run alone. We are a team and we're going to do this together. And I kid you not, John, it's like nobody had looked at these guys like that in a very long time, if ever, in their life. So you could just sort of see what happens when you start believing. Here I was, an absolute stranger, telling them that I believe in them, that like they can do this, they're capable. And that set the tone for everything.
No,
and so we had
if I was your friend back then and you're telling me about I'd say you're nuts, right? A, they're not going to want to run. B, you're asking them to sign a contract that at the end of the day, they don't have to, hold. But it's incredible that you knew that was something that would show them respect, and that you were taking them seriously, and you weren't just doing something out of pity or charity.
Totally. And I think that was really, really important for our relationship. Is I'm going to be there every morning, but I'm not running your miles for you, and you're not running my miles for me. We're all going to have to do the work. It's just a little easier when you do it together. So I had great media connections in Philly from my work at this nonprofit that I was at. I wanted to get the word out. I emailed them, told them what was going on. They had the same reaction that most people listening probably are, which is, wait, what? Like, these guys, people they're going to run. Like, you're not just raising money for the shelter through, like, these guys are going to run. So every major outlet showed up that morning because they had to see it for themselves and they had to ask. And, listen, I've always had a knack for PR and marketing. And honestly, I sort of understood the story here. Here's some young blonde, girl from North Dakota, who's starting a running club for the homeless that everybody has a stereotype around, right? Lazy, dangerous, all of this stuff. And people are just like, it just like broke their brain. It didn't make sense. And I used that to get attention to try to get more people involved.
And this was your first entrepreneur. Yeah. Okay, good. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so it worked, and the reporters that went over to ask, James and Darren and Mike and Joe, why they're doing this stuff, why they're running. And they just got very humane answers. They want to get in shape, wanted to meet new people. They used to run in the service, thought it would be fun. Any answers that anybody else would give. So you could feel almost the like shame, like, what did I think they were going to say?
Right.
And so these stories started to be written about who these guys were. And it was like the city of Philadelphia became invested in their future and outcome. So all these people started to reach out. I quickly built a website. I knew I needed, how are people going to contact and whatever. I needed a place for them to find out more information. This was 2007. And, made a volunteer form, and people wanted to show up and run with us each morning. So this circle grew bigger and bigger. And over those next few weeks, two very important things that were so simple, they were observations where I was like, this can be something. One, these guys were coming every day, and they were coming, as you mentioned, I had a contract, but if they didn't show up, what could I do? There was nothing I could do. It was a commitment they made to themselves and
it's not like team. They made a deposit and they weren't going to get the deposit back, right?
Of course, but it shows
they made an emotional deposit.
Yeah. And it shows the seriousness of even for ourselves, when we make a commitment to something, we feel good when we follow through. So these guys were showing up on time at their own volition because they wanted to be there. And the power of voluntary behavior is very powerful when you can watch what people do because they purely want to. So that was interesting to me. And then the second one was the reaction that I would get when I would track the miles at the end of each run, which was cumulative from the days before. And these guys would just like push and shove to watch me color in the bar chart next to their name, make sure I got their miles right for one, but because that was their moment of acknowledgement and recognition for work being done. And it was just like, holy shit, we actually all want the same thing. We want to be noticed, appreciated, valued, told we're doing a great job, appreciate, I already said that, but loved, all of these emotions. Yeah. And I was like, these guys, because people were like, how are you going to change homelessness? How is running going to help somebody not become homeless?
Yeah.
But to me, based off of running was the vehicle. It was the community that we were building. And in my mind, it was, if without this community, these guys are forever going to be homeless. We are giving them an opportunity to recreate their identity and how they see themselves. Because when you see yourselves, if you think we see people who are homeless and make stereotypes, imagine being homeless and the constant reassurance that you screwed up. Sorry, I don't know if I can say or not, that you screwed up, that you're 40, 50, 60-year-old male in a homeless shelter. Like, can you imagine how you
thought your life was going to turn out? And you're right. What we say to ourselves is 10 times harsher than our worst critic says to us.
Totally. And so I had to flip that script. I had to get these guys to see them as somebody who is reliable, who's an athlete, a teammate, positive, can do hard things, can create a new identity for themselves. And only then, John, were we ever going to be able to help those individuals move out of their current situation, because I had to get them to believe that it was possible and that they were capable of achieving it and that they deserved it. So this vision, I'm like, oh my God, this is it. Like this, everything that I've ever believed about the world and whatever. And nobody, I couldn't find one person that agreed with me. And of course,
even after you're showing the success or before?
Well, this was only a few weeks in, and I have this big fancy job to go to, that I'm supposed to start in a week or two. And this was supposed to just be something I was volunteering and whatever. So everybody thought, oh my God, Ann, it's so nice. It's so admirable that you're giving so much time. And then when I would start to say, this is what I'm supposed to do with, I feel like, for your career? Like, are you kidding? Like, how are you going to pay rent, pay bills? I'm like, I'm going to raise money. I'm going to build this into a comprehensive program that starts with running, but then job training, financial education, all of these things can come on top of that. And people just thought I was out of my mind, John, and that these guys are going to quit. What happens when it gets cold?
Well, you were kind of out of your mind, right?
They thought I was out of my mind and that it would just never work, there's no way. And I'm like, you don't see what I see. You've never met these guys. And I don't believe that these guys are just that special, that there's only 9 of them. There have to be more people in this situation. So, I sort of, again, have had a knack for organization, and I sort of built the infrastructure in my head, how we could make teams at all these different shelters around the city. And then when we wanted to expand, we could create a new chapter in different markets. I sort of could see that this thing could be big and grow. So it's 2 questions. And this is what all entrepreneurs at some point ask, right? All of the doubts, you let yourself be like, okay, what if all of that is true? What if that comes true and this doesn't work? Where am I? Well, I've spent a few months of my life and I go get another job. I'm smart. I'm educated. Like, that's the worst case scenario. I don't lose, everything. Like it's like not as bad as people make it out to be. And the other one was, what if everybody else is wrong and I'm right? What if I can actually help these guys and a lot of other people have a better life for themselves if I follow through on this? And it was just like, I got to try. Like, I at least got to try. And I just continued to put coins in the, this is going to work bucket, right? Like I'm going all in. And this is what entrepreneurs or who want to be entrepreneurs do. They like, oh, well, I'll just put $5,000 in, or I'll just work on the side, that in case if it fails, I never went all in. So like, that's the reason it failed. Right. And when you do that, you just fill up this bucket of like, it's okay if I fail, the self-doubt. Like you're continuing to reiterate a scenario that more than likely is going to be the outcome then, because
versus pushing all the chips in the middle.
Yes. I think it's the only way to really make it work, because
so when did you do that? When did you push all the chips in the middle?
Oh, I called Comcast the day before I was supposed to start. And I said, I'm really grateful.
Your mother had to want to kill you.
Oh, she was going nuts, and it's at that point, you just have to ask people, it's like, do you trust me or not? Like, I need this experience. I need to figure this out. I feel that I'm not that smart, John, to put all these puzzle pieces together. The idea happened July, the homeless shelter, right? It's like something bigger is going on here. And I would be a fool not to at least answer the knock at the door. So I called Comcast and I was just like, thank you so much for the 6 weeks, because I have found what I'm supposed to do with my life. They were not happy. which I understand, but I'm like, I got to give this a go. I have to take this risk. Later on, they became a sponsor, which was really great. But yeah, I started building and trying and getting people involved who were smarter at me and at certain things. We screwed up a ton. We tried different things. We fixed those mistakes and we made other mistakes, but we really stayed true to the vision. And the vision is still the same today.
Which is not the vision, but it is, I'm trying to figure the math. 14 years later, more than that. It's 2007 to 2023. How many years is that?
Like 15 years.
15? Yeah, 16, I think.
16,
or you're
okay.
going on your 16th. That's incredible. So tell us about what it is, what it's turned into.
Well, 6.5 years in, so I had grown it to 12 cities across the country and, got all kinds of, we remain privately funded for all that time. And we still are. We don't take any government money. And I just sort of was building this brand that helped people see homelessness differently. It's not an easy issue to get corporations involved in because there's a lot safer issues for,
right.
For the philanthropic arm of a company, whether
right.
it's children or pets, something just like that you can't argue or is there's no conflict around it.
Right.
But for running, you take running into the mix. Like we were able to get employee engagement and we were able to get all kinds of corporations to get on board as donors, sponsors, and partners because their employees could engage with the population and it would just blow their mind of who these individuals were and break down the stereotypes of why they ended up in that situation. So I left 6.5 years in, not because I didn't love it, but because I knew I was an entrepreneur and I felt very strongly that my duty to this organization is done. And I knew that my job was to set it up to succeed. And I never would have left if I had any question or doubt about that. I had an amazing board. I had incredible corporate sponsors. I had a team in place and I had enough of a footprint across the country and enough money in the bank where I was like, okay, like it's somebody else's turn to come in here. And it's still going strong today. It's in it hasn't grown as much as I maybe would have liked it to, but that's okay. But it's in 15 cities across the country. I think the annual budget is $8 to $9 million, which is awesome, and it's still helping thousands of people.
That's incredible. What a story. And I'm sure you have, so many stories of homeless that got back on their feet and are doing incredible things today.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, it would take up the rest of the podcast plus a couple hours to go through all of that. But one of my proudest moments that really helped a lot of people was building a partnership with Marriott. So Marriott is one of the key employers of Back on My Feet that hire Back on My Feet members after they have gone through our program because we're able to be a reference for them. And, Marriott's not doing us any favors, right? We're not asking them to hire somebody that we don't feel very strongly that has done the work, shows up on time, could make a really good employee because we know if that person doesn't make a good employee, that it's going to be really difficult for us to place the next guy. So they've trusted our vetting process and, take our word. We sort of served as LinkedIn almost for that population. Yeah.
That's great.
Spend 2 days with John and other world-class experience leaders to learn the best ways to build experiences that attract loyal customers and employees. The Customer Service Revolution Conference takes place live in Cleveland. Visit customerservicerevolution.com to get tickets today.
Well, good. All right. So it didn't stop there. I mean, that was just the beginning of your entrepreneur career. In a lot of your stuff, you give so much. And I saw that it's, part of it is for serving people in recovery. And I'm assuming that, stemmed from, your father's past. Yeah. So, all right, then how did you start Solid Core? Was that next?
That was next. So once I knew I was ready for something new, I had to create some space for it. So I started to pay attention. You need to open up your mind. Everything I've done entrepreneurial wise has been part of my own personal life in some way, fashion. Like I was a runner, right? So I used running to help people. And then I work out all the time. I love fitness. I love sports. I love all of that. So I was in Los Angeles for Back on My Feet, setting up the chapter there. And I walked by a Pilates studio and I was like, oh, this is so cute. Like how very LA, because I thought I was like a real athlete. I just thought like, this can't be a hard workout, but I was like, oh, I'll go for the experience. It was very hard, like extremely challenging. And I woke up the next day sore in places I have never been sore. And I was like, there's something here. I'm like, if I don't know that you can work out like this, most people don't know you can work out like this. And so I started taking Pilates classes in New York at the time. And I asked one of the women, and I started to do the math. I was like, there's 10 machines in here. I know what I'm paying. Multiply that times 10 classes a day. I'm like, this is an incredible business. And so I decided, I'm like, this is my next thing. I don't know of a big Pilates brand. I sort of felt I could put my branding skills, my community skills into a company around this way of working out, and that I'd also be able to scale it because I wasn't going to start something that I couldn't scale. So it made a ton of sense to me. I moved to back to DC, and I opened my first location in November 2013. And before even the ink was dry on the first lease, I had my second lease signed. Like, talk about having your chips all in, John. I had offers from some of my Back on My Feet board members who saw what I did with that nonprofit and were like, if you need investors, let us know. I got actual offers. And I'm like, oh, maybe I should take one of these offers because I only have $175,000 to my name. And if this doesn't work, and as soon as I started to say those things, to go back to what we were talking about earlier, I'm like, if I take any investment right now, I'm just feeding the self-doubt. I'm just feeding that I'm wedging my bets if this thing doesn't work. And if I have that mindset, I shouldn't even do this.
Right.
If I have the money to do it myself, and I believe in myself, and I believe in the concept, and I believe in my timing, there is zero reason for me to take an investor on right now.
Yeah. Yeah. And so you started off all on your own.
I started off all on my own, and I opened 25 locations before I raised money. Well, that's not true. I took some money from an individual, from a Back on My Feet board member, after like 8 studios, because I needed to make my own machines. And the guy who was making my machines, I knew was going to sue me. And I told him that. I'm like, I need money to build my own machines, and I'm probably going to go through a lawsuit. And he believed in me. And he was like, what you have done with this company in literally a year and a half, what I saw you do it Back on My Feet. So he gave me about $3.5 million. And I did just that. I separated from that manufacturer. He sued me. I sued him back for all intents and purposes, won that lawsuit, and never had to talk to him ever again. And I went on this journey of building my own machines, which I had no idea how to do. So there was a lot of fumbles there, but it was one of those things, John, where like risk reward. I'm like, I can't build the company that I know I can build if I'm not making my own machines. I have to figure this out. So it was just an obvious step in the process for me. And once that got figured out. So you became
a manufacturer.
Well, I had to hire an engineer, and we had to do tooling, and we had to do prototyping. And then, yes, we own the machine and the patent on the machine. And so then once that was finished, my cousin, actually my first cousin, I knew manufactured some things in China. And I'm like, hey, can you build this for me? And lo and behold, like he could. And so he's been our manufacturer since like 2016, I think, and makes all of our machines that are in our studios.
Is the manufacturing side your only customer, Solid Core?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. And so how many locations?
There's 110 locations now.
How many states?
27, I believe.
That's incredible.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, listen, I could talk about Solid Core the whole time, right? But it was an incredible journey. And I think also, being really clear on what you want your vision to be. Again, I didn't know all the steps to get there, but I did know, John, that I wanted to build an empire. And at some point I wanted to sell it, because I knew I'm an entrepreneur and I like the beginning stages. There'd be no point in me building this thing to never be able to move away from it. And I had experience of doing that back on my feet. So, listen, I wanted to sell the thing in 2020. Obviously, the Mother Nature had other ideas for 2020, navigated some really rough waters during that time, had raised a good amount of private equity. We raised money again in 2021. And as soon as we sort of came out the tail end of COVID, I promoted my COO, who's incredible. His name is Brian Myers, to CEO, and I moved into the exec chair role so that I could sort of sit and serve as the strategic advisor, because I knew after that raise that we did in 2021 that the next one would be a majority, transaction. And I didn't want to get stuck in the CEO role and having to go with or having to not be able to be cashed out. So it was really important to show that the business can operate under different leadership.
Yeah. So
and
when did you sell? When did you sell?
April this year.
Wow. Oh, like a couple months ago.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah.
So now you're just sleeping in until noon and watching Friends reruns.
Yeah, no, even if I wouldn't even want to do that. You just know yourself so much. But yes, I've started another company. I started actually.
You're an addict to building companies.
Yeah. And listen, it's not.
But
even
wait, I don't mean to.
No,
but it is a real thing, right? Because, when you're an entrepreneur, it's hard to relax. It's hard to shut the mind off. And we were talking before we got on how you haven't taken a vacation in years, but this is what drives you.
Yeah, it does. And I like creating things that make people's lives happier and healthier and empower people. And both Back on My Feet, Solid Core, and now Ambition, which is another fitness company, does that. I want people to come into spaces that I build, feel good about themselves, work hard, and, walk away with a sense of empowerment about what they're capable of. That makes me feel really great. Like everybody talks about being an entrepreneur. Like there's several different types of entrepreneurs. I'm an experiential brand entrepreneur. Like I'm never going to create a water bottle. Like I'm not passionate enough about that.
Right.
I want to bring people together. Like even in my personal life, like I'm the one who's bringing people together to play volleyball, to play games, to play card games. I want people connecting, laughing, being competitive, something like that. It brings me a ton of joy, and I'm good at it. And if it can enhance people's lives, I kind of feel like it's a little bit of an obligation to share that gift with the world. So I really love it.
That's awesome. So tell us a little bit about Ambition. It's another fitness company and wellness concept.
Yeah. So boutique fitness, what I love about Solid Core and a lot of other boutique fitness, is the community that's around it. Like it's very tight knit and you get an experience when you're there versus a gym. It's very transactional. But what I was noticing is all these boutique fitness places, including Solid Core, are so bespoke. We offer this one thing and that's all we do. I am a huge believer in variety and diversity. I mean, one in everything in life, but particularly your workouts. We have 600 muscles in our body made up of fast twitch and slow twitch muscles. You will be the healthiest and most functional in your body if you are doing a variety of workouts. I am 42 years old. I am still one of the fastest on that volleyball court. I can jump, I can squat, and it's because I do yoga, Pilates, weightlifting, interval training, a bunch of different things that, are constantly working out my different muscles. So Ambition has 4 concepts underneath one roof. We have a strength class, which is purely weightlifting. A lot of women are afraid, they don't know. We take all of that guesswork out. We have incredible educational coaches who teach you all about weightlifting, how much you should be lifting, how you should be feeling at the last set. All of that. We have an athletic conditioning class, which is about, cardio endurance for the most part. And then we have a hot athletic flow, which is in 100-degree heat, working more of your small twitch muscle fibers. And then we have a recovery class, that is going to help with your mobility and flexibility. So you get all of that underneath one roof, combined with the amazing branding, beautiful space, and community.
So are you the CEO of Ambition?
I am. Yes.
You are, but that's not all you're doing. You also just launched a podcast this year calling How To with Ann.
Yeah.
Tell our listeners about that. And I want to make sure our listeners know I'm going to provide links to Ann's website, her 3 TED Talks, ambition, and your podcast and Solid
Thank
Core.
you.
But tell us about your podcast.
Yeah, so it's called How To with Ann Mahlum, and I really wanted to get granular on my podcast. There's a lot of amazing conversations that can play in the meta space that are fun to listen to. And I like those podcasts as well. And I didn't think the world needed another one from me. So I wanted to make sure I brought people on the podcast that had expertise, like how to save $100,000, how to, now I'm blanking on anything else that I've talked about, how do you start a franchise? Any of these particular items, and bringing people on who've done it several times, are the experts and can really talk our listeners through step by step on how they go about achieving that. Another one is like how to create passive income through real estate investing. Should you buy, how to buy your first home, all of these things. So you can look and scroll through each one of the titles and really pick something that's going to resonate with you.
So you don't stop. Besides that, you're also a motivational speaker that speaks all over the world, which kind of brought our paths together. And you are keynoting this year's 2023 Customer Service Revolution, October 11th and 12th in Cleveland, Ohio. So I am so excited about this. Tell our audience what you're going to be speaking about at the Customer Service Revolution.
Yeah, thank you. We're going to really teach people about leaning into their life and having whatever life that is that they want for themselves. I think often we live in a world, John, where like we need permission, or we started going down a certain path. So that's the path we have to stay on. And I think I'm really good at not just giving people advice and encouragement on how to constantly bring them themselves, but actionable items, and serving a little bit as an example to do that. I think for myself, it's very rewarding to know that we have different chapters and seasons in our life that can last months or years. And then, you can put a close to that, hence selling Solid Core. Okay, where is next? Where is my energy living, that I wanted, deep into? And I think there's a lot of people that get, frustrated and end up in a place where they're not as happy or fulfilled as they could be if they just change direction, and how scary that can feel when you're 6 years into something that you think you got to just see through. So, right. Yeah.
So, but I mean, yeah, the title is Learning to Live on Your Own Terms. What's that look like? I mean, so someone, is in a career and I really like, one of the first things you said was how you were in your mid-20s and you just weren't doing what you were doing. And yeah. I feel like today it's so much worse. Like I talk to so many college graduates and they're really depressed because they don't know what they want to do. And I've always thought like the way we ask, high school graduates, at 18 and 19, pick a major of something you want to do for the next 50 years.
Yeah.
And someone will say, well, my uncle drives a really cool car and he's a CPA. So I think I want to do that. And then they get out and they start doing it and they want to, stab their eyes because it's not what they want. And so, I tell my kids, just go do shit, right? Just go do stuff. Yeah. And you'll find something that attracts you, something that you're really good at, something that someone's willing to pay you for. But it might not be till 30 or 31, which is okay. And I know I'm taking it off, but you have people listening and people that will be listening, to your speech that are 28 and maybe not be where they want. And that could be personally or professionally. And they could be 48 and not where they want, and they feel like it's too late to make a pivot. Or like you said, listen, I've invested 6 years or 26 years into this career. I kind of have to see it through, which I would believe that's totally not true from your vantage point.
Yeah, listen, I think that every day that we are here, we have an opportunity. And where I see people mess up is that I had an ex-boyfriend who was really struggling with finding, his purpose, what to do. And every day he'd go into the office in our apartment and just be on the computer. And I'm like, you got to get out in the world. You got to go start to experience something and do something different. Go work someplace you don't think you should work. You're going to meet somebody, but like continuing to isolate, yourself, or just like, it's like, oh, I just need to do more of this. Maybe this will get better, when the answer is, you might need to blow, everything up. And we get so caught up in a society that tells us that we need to be here and then step here and then step here. And it's just all ridiculous. And from somebody who you could look at, as you said, on the back nine, I can tell you that those thoughts are never ending if you let them be never ending.
You're not on a back nine, Ann. I mean,
well, I know, but back on my feet, it's like, oh my God, when I started back on my feet, John, I'm like, oh my God, I found it. I found the thing, my purpose. I'll never have to search for my purpose again.
Yeah.
It's such a lie.
Naive at the time. Yeah.
And so
but
then
I got to believe that you didn't care what you made at the time, because
of course
you
not.
would be so fulfilled, and the money was a byproduct.
Of course.
Yeah.
And frankly, then that changes, John. I think people get so stuck when they say things like, well, that's not who I am. And I'm like, try adding a sentence at the end of that. That's not who I am right now. That's not who I am anymore. We think that our identity of this person that we have been for the last 5 years, that we are not allowed to question her, to change her, to pivot. We have to honor that person. And I'm like, listen, I've called off 2 engagements. I've started back on my feet and solid core, and I've left those things because my relationship with both of those things should have come to an end. And it doesn't have to be, this horrible thing that needs to blow up or a bad breakup. Most things in life have an ending. And that's how you have different experience. That's what growth is. And I bet you, John, if I asked everybody at your conference, how many of you want to grow? Everybody would raise their hands. The problem is when you're in the growth, you're just like, ew, like this is so uncomfortable. I feel frustrated. I'm like, that's you shedding your skin.
Yeah.
That is something's going to happen from this. Sit in the frustration. Don't wish it away. Like it's a really important part for the transition happening.
Well, and totally, what your life has been around. I don't think anyone, and I shouldn't say anyone, most people, don't enjoy the actual working out, right? They enjoy the results, but the actual working out is the hard part, but we have to do that in order to get the results. So I want to ask you, is the movie Runaway Bride based on your personal life?
I didn't even get that far. I just got to the engagement phase, and fortunately didn't make it to the altar. So didn't have to rewind that much.
No, but I like your topic, learning to live life on your own terms. And I know it applies both professionally and personally,
of course,
which is so important, because there are so many people that are just going through life and counting the days, in 15 more years, I could retire.
Oh my gosh.
Who wants to get old fast? I mean, no one should want to say, God, I can't wait till I turn 65. That'll be, one of the best days of my life.
And, I'll give your listeners and you even a great book to read. It's called Die with Zero. It's Bill Perkins, and he talks about all of these things. Frankly, what we should be doing, John, when we're 65 is working, because our bodies are less, mobile, maybe 70, maybe 85. I'm going to make mine 85 because that's, the vision I want to give myself. But really, that's when we're doing a lot more sitting and whatever. Like that's the time to really stimulate the mind. We played volleyball this morning at 6:30 in the morning. I'm like, listen, my body is a 10 out of 10 right now. I want to get all of the physical benefits from being young and healthy. And that is a massive priority, because at some point in my life in the future, and this book talks about that, how you maximize your physical health, your intellectual health, and your financial wealth. Everybody gets so obsessed with building their wealth and their net worth. Well, at some point that should decline, because what is the point when you're 70, 80 years old and you kept stockpiling all this money? For what?
There's no reward for being the richest man in the cemetery.
Seriously. Yeah. So the book is really great. It makes
Die with zero.
Die with zero.
I love that. And I'm assuming it's not just talking about money. It's talking about, one of my quotes, I don't know who says it, is you should arrive, at your grave in a thoroughly torn up body, skidding in with champagne in one hand, grapes in the other, saying, woohoo, what a ride. And I love that. Right. I mean, you don't want a well-preserved body and a ton of money, when it's time to go.
Yeah, I and it's tricky, because the money game, you start to feel, oh, I need more. Oh, it's a smart game. Like, oh my God, I have less in my account. It's like, it should, if you can really train yourself. And again, well, at the conference, we'll talk a lot about just mindset and thoughts and the things we continue to tell ourselves over and over and over again, and our belief system. But you really have to unwork and rewire so much of what we've been told, because everything about what we've been told by so many people benefits those people, not ourselves. And so that's what I mean about like constantly is this working for me? When if they're like, oh my gosh, you're 42, you need to work still. I'm like, I don't actually have to, work. What if I took a year off? Is that something I want to do? And, do I want to go travel? Okay, that actually doesn't sound appealing to me. But what I would take a year off is play volleyball every single day for 4 hours a day. Like I did that last summer. And so again, it's like, what's the life that I want for myself? And people focus so much, John, of like what this big picture looks like. And I'm like, you have to look at your daily activity. What do you want your morning, afternoon, and evening to actually look like in how you are spending your time, energy, thoughts, and actions?
I love that. And you say it best, it's chapters, right? So
Right.
Even what you're thinking about or I'm thinking about is, this is where I want to be. This is what I want to be doing. That may change in 2-3 years, and that's okay, right? That's okay. I'm ready for something different. I thought this was going to be where I wanted to go. I enjoyed it, but now there's something new that lights my fire.
And not even that. People ask about 5-year, 10-year plans. I have no clue. I don't even know. People try to make plans with me in 3 months. I'm like, I can't do that. I have no idea where I'm going to be. One of my favorite Tony Robbins quote is, the quality of your life is in direct correlation with how much uncertainty you can comfortably live with. And that means we all need to know a little bit of certainty, right? Otherwise where am I going to eat today? Where am I going to sleep? That'll ruin you. But if you can be like, I'm opening myself up for opportunity, for adventure, to do, what I want to do that day, that's how I would prefer to live. And I trust myself to make the right decision. I don't need, Ann has to have this on her calendar. Otherwise she's going to eat bonbons and watch Friends reruns. Like,
right.
I'm not going to do that. I know I'm going to use my time at a high quality, and I don't want to be locked into so many commitments every day, every week, every year that I can't do what you just said, which is, this isn't working for me anymore.
And you're good. And you seem like you have a strength with knowing when that is, and not holding on too long.
Yeah. Totally. 99% of things are supposed to have an ending in life. Like it's okay. And we freak out when it happens. It's like, that's what was supposed to happen. Right. We're supposed to have new relationships, new experiences, new jobs, new everything. And what a way to live life, because you're constantly getting these experiences. That's not just the same predictable, certain over and over and over again.
Well, and I've done well over 100 plus podcasts, and this is probably one of my favorite, if not my all-time favorite. You are an amazing human being. What you've done for so many people, what you've built, and the life that you're modeling is just really inspiring. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. And I'm not going to go listen to all your podcasts and hear that comment at the end of each one now.
Never. I don't think I've ever said that. But I am so excited. This is the last, that our revolutionaries will get to see you live and in person and meet you and hear your powerful presentation. So it's been such a joy. I appreciate it. Look forward to October.
Me too. I will see you in the fall, John. Enjoy August. Have a good time off. All right.
Thank you, revolutionaries, for another episode of the Customer Service Revolution podcast. And we will see you next week.
If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to give the Customer Service Revolution podcast a thumbs up and write us a review. To hear more episodes, subscribe now on iTunes, Spotify, or your favorite podcast app. Thanks for listening and for being part of the Customer Service Revolution.